Hi, Year 3. So Wednesday and a time for science. And in exciting news, we are starting a new topic today. It's like starting a new topic, something else for us to get our teeth into. So for this half term, we are going to be thinking about light and dark, and we're going to be thinking about shadows. And we're going to be looking at the science behind that, some of which you'll have done before. You probably talked about shadows when you were in year 1, and when you were talking about light then. But we're going to, now we're in year 3, think a little bit more about that and do some bit more investigating into different types of shadows and how they're formed and so on. Today, though, because it's our first session, we are going to start with thinking about what we actually mean by light. And that might seem like a bit of an obvious question that I'm asking you there, but we're going to have a look and a think about it together. So let's go to our PowerPoint for today and let's start having a little think about all that key vocabulary and ideas that we're going to be talking about together for this half term. So we are going to be thinking about light and dark. There's quite a good image to hopefully make you think about the difference between what we mean. So the aim is that we are going to be able to explain and understand that we need light to be able to see things, so that enables us to see what we see, and that dark is the absence of light. So where we get dark, that means that there is no light there. So we're going to be thinking about our light sources today. We're going to be able to explain what we mean by this word dark and the fact that we need to be able to have light to be able to see things. So what is light is our question and our thinking point for today. There's our light bulb moment there. So can you name some things that give out light is the first thing to think about. We're just going to get you to think about rather than answer at the moment. So can you name some things that give out light? How does light help us to see? So how does it enable us to see things? We know we use our eyes to be able to look at things, but how does light mean that we're actually able to see those things? What is dark? How do mirrors work? That's an interesting question, isn't it? To think about, how do mirrors work? Right, we use them all the time, come across them all the time. But how do they actually work? So that's another thing we're going to be thinking about for this half term. What is reflection? Maybe those two questions we just looked at there fit together. How are shadows made? Okay, how do we get those shadows? So this unit of work for this half term, those are some of the key questions that we're going to be focusing on and thinking about now. Like I say, you might have some ideas about those already. And it's great when you've got those ideas, because we can test out those ideas and either prove them or maybe disprove them and investigate them. So that's what we're going to be doing this half term. Now, in today's folder, there are some sorting cards. Now, what I would like for you to do, if you're able to, is to have a go at sorting them into 2 groups. So one of those groups that you're going to do is going to be ones which are sources of light. So these are something that give out light. So any object on there that you think gives out light is going to go into one group. And then the other things that do not give out light are going to go into the other group. So there's going to be 2 groups. So you're going to cut out those cards and sort them into those 2 groups. And if you can, explain your reasons for it. Why have you put that one there and why have you put that one in the other group? There are some examples you can see on the PowerPoint here of some of the ones that you might come across. So we've got a candle. So we'd have to think, is that a source of light? Does that give us light? Cheese, does that give us out any light, do we think? A lighthouse, a pair of boots. I'm hoping that those ones are quite obvious, that you think, oh, that one definitely gives out light. Of course, that one doesn't give out light. But within the cards that you've got, there might be some ones there that are a little bit more tricky, that you might have to really question yourself as to actually, do they give out light? Okay, so don't think they're all going to be as easy as those ones, but have a go. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video now, go and have a go at sorting those cards, and then we're going to come back and have a look at some of those cards together. We won't do all of them, but we'll come back and have a look at some of them together. So pause the video and I shall see you shortly with your two groups. Okay, welcome back. How did you get on with sorting out those different cards into those different groups? I wonder. I did say there might have been a few on there that were a bit tricky. I wonder if you found any, or whether you were confident with all of them. Okay, well, let's have a look and see which ones you might have found a little bit tricky. Okay, so it says some of the cards were tricky to sort. The moon and the window and the mirror are some examples. So these objects look like light sources, but they are not. They don't actually give out light. Light is important to them, I suppose we can say, but they don't actually give out light. And that's what we mean by a light source. Okay, so the moon is not a light source because it does not make its own light. We can see the moon because light from the sun reflects off it or bounces off it back to the earth. So that's when we see, when we look up at the sky at night and we see the moon in the sky, it's not actually giving off any of its own light. It's actually reflecting the light that is coming from the sun. So it does really look to us like a light source, but it isn't. Okay, so that one might have caught you out. You might have put that in the light source group, but it's not. Let's have a look at the next one. So the window is not a light source. It is an opening that lets the light from the sun or another light source into the room. So if we open the curtains, the light will come in, but it's not actually creating its own light. So it isn't a light source. And then a mirror. So that's not a source of light either, because it does not make its own light. It reflects light from other sources. So we can look in there and light reflects from it, but it doesn't actually create its own light. So again, that is not a light source. But hopefully the other ones you've managed to group fairly easily. Okay, so as our question, one of the questions we said we were going to be talking about, what is dark? So dark is the absence of light. If there is no light from a light source, so there's no light coming from anywhere, it will be dark. So think about times when it is dark or places where it is dark. Which sources of light are absent or switched off? So I wonder if you can think of any examples where it might be dark. Well, it might become dark when you go to bed, especially this time of year. Okay, as we get closer to summer, it might not be quite the case, but this time of year, probably when you go to bed now, it is dark. It might not be completely dark though, because even when you switch your light off in your room, which would be a light source, there might be some light that is coming in from somewhere else. It might be coming from underneath your doorway if you've got the light on the landing outside, or if the stars are shining outside, or if the moon is reflecting the light from the sun. So there can be different places, different ways that the light can still get into your room. So it's very rare to have complete darkness because there's lots of light around us, but it can certainly become darker when we are switching things off, those light sources go. So can we see in the dark? Well, if it's pitch dark, no, we can't see, because the light is not there for us to allow us to be able to see things. Okay, it might be when you go to bed at night and to begin with you can't see anything at all, but slowly as your eyes adjust to those little bit of light sources that are coming into the room, you might be able to pick out one or two things in your room, but it's certainly a lot more difficult to see things when there is not the light there to allow us to do that. So there is our reminder of our aim and what we are trying to achieve today. So let me explain to you your task for today if I come out of that PowerPoint. So it's really getting you to think about where those light sources are and how we are able to see things due to the light that is around us. So I'm going to show you now a smartboard, which is going to explain to you a little bit about what I would like your work to look like today. So we can see we've got today's date, we've got our WALT to identify light sources. Now you can see here, I have started off by splitting my page into 4 here. And I've got 4 different headings that we're going to be using. I've got camping at night, I've got a street at night, I've got at home, and I've got at home in a power cut. So slight difference there on those last 2, but there's 4 sections. So there is a sheet in today's folder where this is all set out for you. So if you want to, you can use that. But if you want to, you could just set this up really easily in a book or on a piece of paper yourself and split it into 4 and put those 4 headings down in each of the different sections. And then what I would like you to do is to have a think about drawing a picture to go in each one. So I've done 2 of them, made a start on 2 of them already. So you can see here on my camping at night, I have cheated a little bit because I've copied a picture and printed it and pasted it in. But I've got a picture there of camping at night. Now, what we need to be doing now is to label where those light sources are in that picture there. So what things in that picture are creating light for us, okay? And we need to label them. So if I look in that picture there, I can see a tent. Now, is that going to be creating any light? Is that a light source? Well, no, that's not creating any light. So that wouldn't be a light source. So I wouldn't label that one. I can see a mountain in the background that's got some snow on top, but again, that's not a light source. It's not creating any light, so I'm not going to label that. I can see a fire here, so that is a light source. So that's creating, or creates heat as well, but it does create light, which enables us to see some of that environment that we've got there with the tent. So I could then label that one there. So if I drew a line to here, I could then label that I'm going to have fire as my light source. I'm just going to make my writing a little smaller here because otherwise it won't get too big for the space that I have got. So let's try it in here. So I'm going to label that one fire because that is, there we go, a light source. So I've drawn a line to it and I've labeled it fire. Okay, that's creating some light. Now, what else can I see in that picture? Well, I can see some trees, but again, trees don't generate any light, so that's not going to be something I'm going to label. I've got the moon here. Now, is that a light source? Would I label that? No, I wouldn't label it, would I? Because remember, we've just talked about in our PowerPoint that the moon actually reflects the light from the sun. So we wouldn't label our moon there as a light source. I might want to make a little note because somebody might look at that and say, why hasn't the moon been labelled? But we need to explain why we haven't. So I could add a little note here. So moon is not a light source. It reflects from the sun. There we go. It's quite big there. Let's just make that a little smaller so I can just try and just move it over there a bit. There There we go. So I made a little note there, look, that I'm not labeling it as such, but I'm putting a little note on there just to say that I haven't forgotten about it. I have looked, but I know that that is not a light source. It reflects from the sun. So I've labelled that. What else can I see in the pictures? Clouds. Well, clouds don't give off any light, so I wouldn't label that one. Stars. No, stars, they do give off light because they're sort of burning balls of gas, so they do generate light. So I actually would label that one here. So I could draw a line going, I've got lots of stars in there, so I could choose any of those really. And then I'm going to put just here, a little label for my stars. Okay, so we can see that we have got there our labels that we've put on for those light sources that we can see there. Okay, now there could be other things in that picture. I mean, if you think when you go camping, things that you might have with you, you might have a torch maybe, that's not in the picture, but you might include that in your picture there. So you might have a torch or a lantern. Somebody might have outside, because they're very often when you go camping, you might have those to allow you to see. So they aren't the only things that we could have in the picture. It's your picture, so you can decide, but you need to be labeling any light sources that you can think of in your picture. Okay. So, and then the same with the other ones that we've got on there. We've got the street at night. So again, I've got an example of a picture there. So you could have a think about what things in that picture there are creating light and which ones you want to use in your picture. So again, there's the moon. We've already talked about the moon in the last one, so we might need to make a note on that. There are, there's cars there. Now, is there something on the car that might be generating some lights, might have a light source on it? Yeah, you're right. The lights, the headlights on the car. So you could label the headlight of the car as a light source. Okay. We've also got some light coming from the windows of the houses as well. Okay, so you might want to label that. That would be a light source. So from inside the house, there is a light source there which is shining out. So remember, it's not the window itself that's the light source, but there's something on inside that room. I'm assuming it's going to be a lamp that's on that's creating that light. So again, use your picture to show us where the light sources are and label them. And any notes that you want to make about anything else, you might want to mention about the window that we just talked about, you can put at the side as well. Okay, so as much detail as you want. And then the last two boxes we've got, so they're fairly similar. We've got at home, and really we're thinking about at home at night. That's going to give you more things to include really in your picture there, isn't it? If we're thinking at night, okay, so we'll keep that at night theme on there. So at home, at night. So what things might you have? You might want to think about a particular room. You might want to think about your bedroom, or you might want to think about the lounge. What sorts of things might be generating light in those rooms in your house? Okay, so draw a picture and label any light sources. And then what about, just as a slight difference, you could use the same room as you've used in the first one, but what would that change if there was a power cut? Would all of those things that were generating light before, so if you're in the lounge, would your lamp still be working? Your television still be working? Because television create light, because that's how, you know, we can see them there. Would they all still be working in a power cut though? A lot of those things wouldn't, but there would be some things that might still be working to generate light. People tend to light a candle, don't they? In a power cut, you might light a candle. I know some people do it anyway because it's a nice thing to do, but definitely in a power cut, that would still be able to be working. If you've got your laptop on and it was charged already, it's got some battery in it, the light from the screen might give you that light source as well. So you think carefully on that one, what things would still give you light and what wouldn't, okay? So I will come out of that for a moment. So remember, there is a sheet for you to use in today's folder if you want to, but you can do it yourself and set it all out, okay? But each box, a picture with labels of those light sources and any other notes, important information you think you need to include in that. If you'd like to, as always, you can send us a picture of your work or show it to us when you're on the Zoom call later on, and you can talk to us about what you've included and what you haven't included in your diagrams and pictures. So have a good day, rest of the day with that, and we shall catch up with you soon and see how you have got on. Take care. Bye.